Have you ever noticed how Olympic athletes have incredible physiques, but they rarely train specifically just to alter how they look? Now, their secret isn't complicated, isn't based in any complex science. They simply prioritize what their bodies can do over how they look. And the aesthetics actually come as a bit of a bonus and perk. Now, I remember when I started off my fitness journey, staring at the mirror, weeks of grueling workouts, frustrated because I didn't look like the fitness influencers I was idolizing at the time. And that I followed, I felt stuck. I was constantly chasing an impossible ideal. And then I switched my mindset to, performance-based goals, and everything changed for me. My motivation soared, my progress felt tangible, I really felt empowered, and the mental shift made all the difference for me. And hopefully this video, I believe, can do this for you too if you watch it. Now, I like to call this the trap of aesthetic training. Now, if you've ever quit a program because you didn't see changes fast enough, you're not alone. A lot of people start fitness journeys focusing purely on, their looks. They want toned arms, they want chiseled abs, or achieving this Instagram perfect physique. This mindset often leads to frustration, setting unrealistic expectations. They are jumping from one program to another, thinking that's the secret, it's all in the program. And you just start spiraling into negative self-talk, and when results aren't coming quick enough. And interestingly, this is backed up by research, because there was a 22 study found that 68% of gym goers quit within 3 months of when their only goal was appearance-based. Now that's 7 out of 10 people walking away because the mirror didn't reflect their efforts fast enough. Now imagine someone starting a program to get abs but giving up after 3 weeks because they didn't see the immediate results, even though the progress that they'd made, like improved posture or more defined core, more defined shoulders. Just the fact that the abs weren't there fully popping from Instagram, and yet it's easy to overlook when you're fixated on that one specific outcome, that you're ignoring all these other benefits. Now, social media amplifies this frustration because every scroll on any platform shows You okay? Excuse me. It shows flawless physiques, perfect lighting, angles, often with editing, and this creates a cycle where you're comparing yourself to somebody else's highlight reel. You feel discouraged, and those idolized images then reflect most people's realities, yet they keep chasing the quick fix instead of meaningful progress. And for myself, I found this isolation-based training and movements and workouts really boring. I didn't really have any reason to train for like a physique athlete, and if I had zero interest in the sport, I found stripping away exercises and prioritising isolation just wasn't fun to me. So the chances of me sticking to that as a program long term was pretty much a guaranteed no. So then when I started to train for, let's call it, proportional strength, utilising much more rotation in my workouts, unilateral work, plyometric and calisthenics based, principles, really piqued my interest. Really, really did. And ironically, my strength and physical performance improved vastly too. I started to tie this into, performance-based goals like wanting to zercher squat twice my body weight, which I've done. I wanted to be able to improve my distance sprinting over 20 seconds, and these offered concrete milestones where I either hit those goals or I didn't. And that measurable, tangible, trackable way helped boost my motivation, keep me going, because mirror changes don't happen as often as performance changes can when you do the right kind of programming. And when you train for performance, I think that I've had the best body transformation as a perk or a side benefit from it too. Now, how performance-based training changed everything for me is I approach it a bit like a video game. Imagine when you level up in a video game, that's the power of performance-based training. Instead of chasing a vague goal of, you want to look better, you focus on measurable capabilities and how much you can lift, how fast you can run, how much longer you can last, what's your conditioning improving on. And these aren't just opinions or subjective judgments. Either you ran that 5K quicker or you didn't. Either you added 5 kilos to the bar for your back squat or you didn't. There's no guessing, there's no mirror tricks, just clear, trackable, tangible progress. And that feels like you're unlocking a new achievement when you compare it to the video game scenario. And it's like it's that dopamine hit, that drug to keep going. And research has shown that in the Journal of Sports Science that focusing on objective-based metrics boosts intrinsic motivation by 42%. So when you see undeniable evidence of improvement, you don't need willpower. To keep going, you're hooked on the actual journey and the progress itself. You're invested into it. Now, for myself, performance-based goals turn workouts into, you could call them solvable challenges. So, want to do your first pull-up, you have to break it down with resistance band assistance in the first stage, then possibly doing eccentrics, and then moving on to the full movement when that strength foundation is there. And each small win builds confidence. You have to treat any goal like a staircase. You don't just jump from the bottom to the top. You take one tread or one increment at a time, showing that gradual process and progress leads to the end goal ultimately. And I think tracking is key. So a simple notebook and a pen or an app can record your weights, your reps, your sets, and over the weeks you start to build what numbers tell what mirror can't. And there was a study found that trainees who track performance stay consistent 3 times longer than those who tracked their looks purely for aesthetic-based reasons. And seeing even slight improvements creates, that momentum that vague goals like get toned, they can't match to it. So a secret that I think that's really important from performance-based training over aesthetics, in my opinion, is that, you can improve your performance faster than your aesthetics. Compound lifts like your squats, your deadlifts, they do engage more compound, more muscle fibers. You have benefits for improving posture, muscular symmetry, and your body adapts to it. When it's like you're asking for strength, the shape then comes as a bit of a bonus to it. And if you want to set performance goals for your training at work, utilize what Olympic coaches do. They use this exact method, and most people fail because, as we've mentioned, vague goals like get toned, lose weight, they don't lack an anchor. They're not clear, there's no plan, there's no finish line. You want to utilize the SMART framework. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And it's proven to work because in the American Journal of Psychology, it found that specific goals increase success rates by 300% compared to vague ones. So there's power in the goals that you're setting here. Now let's go down and let's break down a scenario through every single step. If we take the first letter, specific. Now a goal like get toned arms is just too broad. So instead, let's say we want to do 10 strict pull-ups in 8 weeks. It's a clear target, but you have to break it down into smaller steps. So aiming for 3 pull-ups by week 2, 6 by week 4, and 10 by week 8. Each milestone is, a mini victory, and research shows that celebrating these smaller wins boosts long-term adherence. And then if we're talking measurable, so let's start to track progress like Olympic athletes do, where they log every workout. And it's not just the weights, the reps, the sets, it's also how they felt and what they felt worked in the session. You don't need fancy things for this, a notebook and a pen. Write down simple like Monday, 3 sets of 2 pull-ups, Wednesday, 4 sets of 2 pull-ups, Friday, 3 sets of 3 pull-ups. And you start watching these numbers incrementally climb. And this is proving progression, even if physical changes aren't that obvious yet. Again, that's not the goal. Then we look at achievable. So you want to start where you are. So if you've never done a pull-up before, aiming for 20 in a month is unrealistic. But using resistance bands for assistance, or doing negative reps where you jump up lower from the bar. There was an interesting study here that showed that one group setting small incremental goals stuck with their training 3 times longer than those aiming for huge leaps. Small wins build confidence and prevent burnout. They build momentum, and that's important, right? Then we can move on to relevance or relevant. So you want to choose goals that actually excite you. So if you hate running, don't set a 5K goal. The whole thing of you want to set a goal that is specifically relevant is the word to what you want to achieve. So if you wanted to, let's say, improve your sprint time, then you want to be working on, exercises and programs that actually buffer that performance-based metric that you're aiming to achieve. And then we talk about time or time bound. So like deadlines create urgency. So adding like 20 pounds to a squat in 8 weeks forces you to plan, squatting 2 to 3 times a week. And then you need to add progressive overload. And without a time frame, it's easy to slack off and just, let it fall to the wayside and not commit to your goals. Now, the mental game changer I think that was big for me with performance-based goals is it kind of cured my gym anxiety, and I think it can help you too. So when you stop worrying about how you look and start focusing on what your body can do, something unexpected happens. The constant comparison starts to fade away. The voice in your head that's kind of saying to you that, you don't look good enough, it gets much quieter. And this is backed by studies in the Journal of Health Psychology. It found that performance-orientated exercises report a 35% better body image than those focused on appearance. And this shows how shifting your focus can transform not just your workouts, but how you actually view and see yourself. And I think that aesthetic-based training often leads down a bit of a rough path because there's endless mirror checks, there's obsessive calorie counting and frustration when results aren't materialising. And there's so many factors that come into, altering appearance, like water retention, dietary intake. And, this performance focus kills that negative self-talk because it gives you concrete wins when you hit a new PB on like your deadlift, your run. It's factual evidence that you're improving. It's not just by luck, you've actually worked for it and it starts to show. And then I think that strength and conditioning builds real life confidence. When you know that you can lift a heavy or awkward load without help, or you can run to catch the bus without getting winded, you have a greater level of assurance and belief in what you can do day to day. And that helps you feel a greater sense of purpose and achievement, you could call it. I know it has for me, certainly. So if it has for you, then, drop in the comments, let me know. I'd just like to say, I think one thing that's important here is that nobody lifts in day-to-day life with perfect form or technique. We usually just lift and hope for the best. Hence why I found that building a resilient body that you can lift with slightly rounded or imperfect posture or with an awkward reach, because that's how life is. I have more belief in my ability to pull it off, than if I was purely focusing on training for how I look, touch wood. It's kept me relatively injury-free, which I'm very grateful for. But there's been such number of times where I've been on a run and I've rolled my ankle running, and at the time I thought, is it bad? But I've been able to finish the run, keep training, and relatively remain pain-free. And I put that down to my experience, and I test it to the training modalities and conditioning I've built, and I fear that a lot of people still do avoid, heavy lifting, fearing like, bulking, and research showing the opposite, that, a heavy compound lifts create lean, proportional muscle growth without, the extreme bulk people fear, but it's damn hard to get that. Let's look at sprinters, for example. They lift heavy to improve performance and have some of the most toned physiques in the sport. This happens purely because, the performance-based training, stimulates that muscle fiber differently than probably an aesthetic-based program could do for them. The functional movement, builds strength and neuromuscular efficiency, and it often leads to that, that athletic look, which I think a lot of people actually chase, but they get it confused with, an aesthetic-based appearance and think that bodybuilding is the way to possibly pursue that avenue. Now, there was one analysis that compared physique competitors to CrossFit athletes, and it found nearly identical body fat percentages, but the CrossFit group, ironically, maintained, their body composition all year round without drastic weight cuts. Their training and eating supported, performance first, so their bodies adapted naturally. And the aesthetic-based programs often found that, those unsustainable habits like massive calorie reduction, dehydrating before photo shoots, and that disappear the following week, funnily enough. And, the performance-based changes last because they're built on habits that don't purely rely on willpower. They are based on a higher purpose and higher reason, and you're doing something that you actually want to get a tangible or a life-changing result from it to see you through life, ideally. Now, my closing statement is that the perfect body isn't a photograph. It's one that lets you, sprint up the stairs without gasping, lift heavy boxes effortlessly, or outlast your kids in the park. You know, imagine reaching the top of the stairs, you know, heart steady, feeling unstoppable. You know, this week that's possible. You can choose one performance-based goal, whether it's to run a mile faster, whether it's to add 5 kilos to your deadlift, if it's to add 1 inch to your vertical jump, or just do 20 press-ups without stopping. Strength and endurance, personally, I think, and aesthetics will follow if you follow a well-structured program. And when you see Olympians that train for performance and not how they look, you know, your journey can mirror theirs for sure. So if take inspiration and give it a go, you know, start small, track your progress, celebrate what your body can actually do and what it can achieve. And I think you'll find that if you find training a bit of a bore or hard to commit to because you're chasing like that old school mindset of how it is, how you look, I think this could be really game changing for you. And that's the end of, you know, this topic talking point this week. So again, thank you for watching. If you've stuck all the way through, do like and subscribe. And if you've got any comments, drop them below. And I'll see you on the next video.